I just got back to New York last night and missed the weather where I was uh, in Montana. It's
Yeah, what part of
really.
Montana?
I was in. Well, I was in Missoula, Montana, and then like a lake house about an hour and a half away from Missoula.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and now I'm back in my place in Brooklyn, and it's
Uh,
very different here.
yeah, I when I did some cruise ship work, we would dock at Red Hook
Oh,
and
okay.
take the A train. Forget the name of the mall that we would walk to, and then take the A train up to Manhattan, and try to make a day of it while we could. But
Right, right.
uh,
Nice.
so you've been actually still really pretty busy through all of this. I mean, Canadian Brass have been maintaining a pretty good presence through all the lockdown here.
Yeah, we have. We've been quite busy. There's never been a dull moment, and every day has been jam packed. And it's hard to keep track of things. I mean, I've never been so busy and made so little money in my whole life. It's a really interesting time.
Yeah. Isn't this what you signed up for, though?
Apparently, I don't
Yeah.
know. I didn't see anything in writing years ago, when I went to school for all of this. But who knew? Who knew that this would happen? We'll see how exactly we rebound from all of this and what really comes through. I hope that a lot of people react to this in as positive of a way as they can, actually, because I think this is a test for all of us.
Hmm.
Whatever we're doing, it's a test to make sure that we're um, doing the things that are truly important to do, and don't waste your time doing any of the other things that you may have been doing prior to this that
Hmm.
maybe weren't worth it.
Well, I have seen quite a few really positive things come out. And of course, I'm thinking about social media and all the artists of every caliber, right? Of every level, using social media to stay engaged, to stay connected with their fans, to create new content. I mean, it's pretty cool. We've all been forced to sit in front of the computer and create and consume through all of this. And there's a lot of really good stuff.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about that balance a lot between creating and consuming. It seems like there's so much content out there being created that it surpasses the rate of consumption by comparison to times before. So many people are busy creating all sorts of things now, and hopefully, I hope that we find a nice balance after all of this, because it does seem to have suddenly become quite lopsided. There's just so much content out there, and it can be difficult to sift through uh, all of the things that exist. It's overwhelming, the amount of content out there.
Well, and I've asked some others, are you concerned that we're giving away so much content for free?
Yeah.
Is it going to create an expectation that, this is the way it's going to be in the future? Or are we going to go to some kind of subscription service to do this? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about that. And musicians, of course, in this digital age where everything's downloaded and streamed now, uh, musicians on the whole have certainly suffered from this. Prior to that, the way, of course, I mean, I don't need to tell you, but it was such a different way of going about to get a record deal. And you sign on with a producer, you sign on with Sony or Columbia or a big company like that. And the game totally changed, and I'm afraid that the game changed not so favorably for musicians, unless you're a very successful pop musician. However, even if you're a successful pop musician, I mean, you may have heard like the Taylor Swift saga. She demanded that musicians be paid more fairly, and she wasn't going to make her music available until the Spotify's and similar companies followed suit and began to pay musicians a little more fairly. Now, still, when you're at the bottom of the totem pole, like many classical musicians or jazz musicians, struggling musicians who are still incredibly talented, it's really hard to make a living in this industry. So, to get back more to your point and your question, I do think that musicians now need to set something up, especially in this booming era of small businesses. Set something up to make it fair for themselves, and it's okay to withhold. Especially now, if people care about artists, then they will support the artists that they want to support. So I've done that. I've encouraged Canadian Brass to do that. I encourage others to do that and not give everything away for free. I think it's okay to give away a teaser of this and that. Say, hey, this is what we're doing. If you like it, check out more. Subscribe to this or pay for this. You know, this is a tasting. We'll give you a free sample. It's like, you know, when you go to your favorite brewery, you know, they usually give you a little sample of the beer that you've never had before you get a whole pint. So I like to say it's okay to do the same thing, and I think we need to do more of that. And even set, you know, for example, set up your own website to bring consumers and your audience directly to there instead of relying so heavily on Spotify. You know, Spotify has just boomed so out of control, and a lot of people are playing that game and will continue to play that game for years because as a consumer, it's so easy. You know, I'm guilty of going on Google Play or Spotify and checking something out just because it's so easy to. But unfortunately, it's not so fair to the musicians who are creating all of that music for it. That's my rant. Sorry.
Good rant. I give it an A+.
Thank you.
Well, you know, that's why, you know, we both have Patreon pages. I checked yours out. You know, first I ever heard about that, of course, was Brass Junkies. Okay. You know, as I was listening to them, and I was like, okay, I got to check this out. But, you know, that, at least we still have that to still try to generate something. And, you know, I've been trying to steer supporters of the podcast that direction as well. And it's just like you're still trying to, you know, for your own artistry, steering people there to support. And, you know, again, thank goodness for at least platforms like Patreon to help out. That's not a paid plug for Patreon, by the way. Yeah.
Right.
So, or maybe it could be. I'll contact them afterwards and see if they'll endorse
We'll see. We can talk about it for a few more minutes to really dig in there and secure that.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that a platform like Patreon is headed in the right direction for any sort of artist and support system. I think that's the right idea, and I'd like to see more things like that happening. And perhaps even more things like that happening right within the websites of artists, which we already are. You know, we see plenty of donate here buttons on people's websites, and it goes straight to your PayPal, or like before you know it, your credit card is charged. But I think that's headed in the right direction, and it's a really tough time for artists. We're all mostly unemployed right now. Maybe with the exception of music educators who have jobs there, but music performers are certainly all unemployed right now. So it's tough, and hopefully we'll come out of this with something that's a little more fair for artists.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I think this little segment is going to be excerpted and placed on Facebook pretty quickly, because I think this is a good conversation. You know, this is worth people hearing.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, seriously, let's talk about you a little bit. And you know, you mentioned things maybe better for educators. So, are you teaching? Or are you about to restart teaching somewhere?
Yeah. Well, I just started teaching last year at the Manhattan School of Music. Technically, in their contemporary program, they have a contemporary ensemble where students, after they have their bachelor's degree, they can audition for this group, and it's specific for new music. I guess probably any music written within maybe the last 60 or 70 years is what they all specialize in. And some of them write their own music in the program as well, and they deal with electronics, a lot of cutting edge things. So that's where I'm at, and we're, of course, talking. I get an email from MSM probably every day about the new update. This is the new plan for the next year. Like, this is how all the online learning will work. This is how you use the video system and this and that. So it's an ever-changing situation, and we're just going to continue to play it by ear. And I'll be teaching there next year still, but it'll probably be a combination of virtual and in person,
Right.
depending on the situation, how New York's doing come September.
Hmm. Is this a undergraduate program only, or can you get graduate degrees?
It's for the new music program. It's only graduate. It's like
Hmm.
I think it's a diploma that you get at the end of
Hmm.
it. So yeah, you have to have at a minimum a bachelor's degree already in order to audition for this program.
Yeah. I saw a video online. It was very cool, and I think you may have been playing in it, but trumpet, strings, and clarinet. Does that sound
That sounds
right?
familiar. Yeah, with
Yeah.
founders.
Yes, that's it.
Yes.
That's it. So is it similar to, or is that the group? Is that one at Manhattan School?
No, that's very different. I started Founders about a year after I left Canadian Brass. I left Canadian Brass in 2013 and then stumbled upon a group of friends who were classical musicians, but like secretly always wanted to start a band.
Hmm.
So we started this group where we shared our song ideas with each other, and that ended up being called Founders. A year later, we
Hmm.
named it and made a record, and it became a thing. So that's that group, and I use that as a vehicle for composing and arranging expression.
Hmm.
And the thing at MSM is it's a chamber orchestra size. There's one of each instrument in the orchestra about,
Oh,
and
okay.
maybe double strings, but it's a relatively small program.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And original compositions, or are you even, is everybody contributing with arrangements or creation?
In Founders, yeah, everybody brings things in. I would say that myself and my counterpart Ben Russell, he plays violin and sings in this group. So between he and I, we bring in probably a lion's share of
Hmm.
the material. But we'll get together, and at some point, everyone has brought in an original or an arrangement actually in
Hmm.
the group.
Hmm.
That's sort of how the group was founded. That's how Founders was founded.
Hmm. I got to check it out. You said you've already made an album. I'll have to remember to search that. But what's the title of it?
Our debut album is called You and Who, and it can be going back not to plug Spotify, but you can find it on Spotify. You can find it in all of the places,
Yeah.
basically. You can
Okay.
also find it directly on our website,
There
which
you
is
go.
the best quality version, the best place you could possibly go, directly to the artist's website, foundersmusic.org. And you can get it there. And we're actually in the process of mixing another album right now that'll be
Hmm.
released before the end of 2020,
Hmm.
called Songs for the End of Time, which is sort of a heavy title for these times, we realize. But we were planning on making this album a year ago before all of this business
Yeah.
happened,
Right.
and we were still going to call it that. And then things got real. And
Yeah.
so we're thinking, is this too much for people? Songs
Right.
for the End of Time. We don't want to like bring any more angst to
Right.
humanity. There already is, but we're gonna stay the course. It's our tribute to Messiaen,
I was
and
just going to ask about that because he was it a string quartet or
Quartet
what?
for the End of
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah.
Close to a string quartet. It's a piano, violin, cello, clarinet, and we've rearranged it for trumpet, clarinet, violin, cello, bass, singing, sometimes ensemble singing, and some other special effects.
Hmm.
So that's it. It's our ode to the Quartet for the End of Time.
That's very cool. Yeah, and good. I'm glad you put all the URL and everything in there. So yeah. So the arranging thing, and I actually bought your arrangement of the Gershwin Preludes, and I'm looking forward to programming that next spring.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you. Thank you
really,
for thank you for picking that
yeah.
up.
You're welcome. And I paid for it. I didn't search online for a free PDF, right?
That's great. I know.
Right, which you can seem
Right.
to find anywhere these days. But
I know that's true.
um, yeah, so where did this arranging bug, or not where, but when? When did it bite you? When did you get interested in doing that?
Well, I started on piano originally, and it might have been that when I migrated from piano to the trumpet. Well, I picked up the trumpet in middle school, and then I found that I kind of excelled at the trumpet faster, in which I did the piano.
Hmm.
And there are just so many ridiculous pianists out there. Not that there aren't ridiculous trumpeters, but there are just more pianists. Everyone and their sister plays piano. So uh, I think it was because of knowledge of the piano repertoire, when I picked up the trumpet and got more serious with it, I noticed that, man, there's just so much more material, great material in the piano repertoire. So I started to arrange things for trumpet and piano based on a lot of piano repertoire that I would just lift. I just extract melodies from piano pieces and make those arrangements sort of as a starting place. And did that with, I heard a lot of Gershwin and similar composers growing up in my house with my dad playing and teaching. So that sort of music was always around. Very melodic, song-like music was just always happening. And yeah, and then in school I got a little more interested in composition and writing things for friends. And then in Canadian brass, I thought, well, I might as well try to write some things for Canadian brass. And so then the brass bug expanded. I learned how to write for the quintet. And I just do it over and over and over. And I don't know how many arrangements I've done by now, but quite a few.
Was Bad Romance your arrangement? The one you
Yes.
did for, or Brass Romance, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So I remember hearing that, and I played it, and somebody goes, "There's Coldplay in there somewhere."
There's a little Coldplay. It was
Yeah.
foreshadowing. It was foreshadowing for the next Brass Underground single to come out. I had already arranged Viva La Vida Coldplay. And unfortunately, it took a while for the next single to drop, so everyone had forgotten that I'd quoted Viva La Vida and Brass Romance. But that was the idea, was it was gonna try to like plug whatever the next one would be within that song. And but yeah.
That might be the edgiest Canadian brass video I've seen. I don't know that I've seen any others with electronics or Chris going into the the stratosphere singing. Yeah, that was terrific. But
It certainly was different. Yeah. Well, Chris had this knack for whenever we were out, often after concerts, but it wouldn't like take a drink or anything. There wouldn't need to be any instigating for him to get on top of the tallest table and sing as high as he could at any given moment in public. So since he was so willing to do that for anyone, anywhere, I figured, well, we might as well exercise this tool we have within Canadian brass. And
Right.
so I arranged the piece with him in mind. And in the version that you can buy through Canadian brass, it says optional piccolo trumpet or voice. So,
okay,
because it's in a
okay.
similar register
Right.
where he's singing. So, and not everybody can sing up there, but there is a video of another like high school group where a kid goes for it and he puts his trumpet down and he sings in the same register that Chris sang in, and so it can be done.
That's very cool. Yeah. All right. So you mentioned a little bit of middle school, but you mentioned you started on piano. How old were you when you started on piano?
I was 5 in the first grade. Yeah, it's about
Wow, an early first grader. Yeah.
Yeah, I have an October birthday, so yeah, I did start a little young.
Yeah. Where'd you go to school?
Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me back up. So I went to grade school in Grand Rapids, and then moved to Kalamazoo in the 8th grade, Kalamazoo, Michigan, and then went to Juilliard for my undergrad. And then in my last year of undergrad, I started playing with the Canadian brass.
Who'd you study with at Juilliard?
My first 2 years were with Ray Mace, and the second 2 years were with Mark Gould.
Wow. Is it like two ends of the spectrum, right?
Yeah, they really are. Right.
But both fantastic players, obviously. Yeah, it's just personality-wise, right?
Yeah. No, I think it was great training. I wouldn't have done it again differently. Having those two different worlds were what I needed. Because Mace got my trumpet playing in line and perfected a lot of things and assigned me so many things to just work on, to clean up my playing and make me stronger and develop my sound. And then I went over to Gould, which is a pretty normal thing to do. I would say most people do it in that order: Mace and then Gould. and then Gould developed a lot of other things, a lot of musical things, thinking about things more, not wasting anyone's time with what you're trying to say through
Right.
music, and being sure that you are trying to say something, because he would let you know if you felt like if he felt like you might be wasting his time or others. Yeah, his point being just get to the point, speak something, say something through what you're doing, and he wouldn't settle for anything less. Both of them were demanding in very different ways.
Do you find now as you teach either one of their voices coming through in your studio?
Yeah, I would say that it's probably an equal amount of everything that I've taken in and absorbed through life. I had a great first trumpet teacher, Greg Good, in Grand Rapids, and then an amazing second trumpet teacher, Scott Thornburg, at Western
Oh yeah,
Michigan. When
right.
I was in high school, I got to study with him. So I was with him for 5 years, actually, and really with him it was just imitation. I would just try to sound like him, and he was incredibly kind to me the whole way through, and just over-assigned me things, just assigned me so much every week, and I could like barely get through it. But I think he knew what he was doing. He was really trying to push me in a good way, and every week I would just try to imitate him. It was definitely a blessing to have such a strong musician, trumpet player in Kalamazoo, where I was, to imitate. So when I'm teaching others, I would say that all of those teachers that I've had in my life come through. And I'd say that based on the trumpet player, what I feel that they need, they might get a little bit more of someone else. If they need a little more just trumpet technique, basic things, I might dig back further. I wouldn't throw a Mark Gould quote at them.
Right.
And vice versa.
Sure.
If somebody can already play and they need to go the extra step, then I'm more than happy to go there with them, and in fact prefer that. I love teaching at that really high level where you don't have to talk about trumpet things anymore.
Right.
You can just talk about the music and the things that you can say through it.
I just finished prepping my syllabus for this coming semester. Actually, I went ahead and did it for the whole year just because I was on a roll. I thought I'm going to keep going, and I actually created assignments for every week. And of course, we'll move things around as needed. But the thought actually went through my head: every single one of those students is going to complain, "It's too much. It's too much."
I
And
know.
I know it's going to happen. First time I talk to them, it's going to be like, "How do you expect me to get through this?" Well, I did. And
Yeah.
every other trumpet player who goes through college does the same thing, and it's I think sometimes they don't look at it like their history classes or their math classes. It's like the expectations there are fine. The amount of assignments they have in those classes are fine. We can't dump this much on them for trumpet lessons. And I think some of my students, that's a total it's complete guesswork on my part, but that's kind of what I see.
Well, and hopefully that's the thing that they're most passionate about out of all the things they're doing at school. I would think that if they're there for the trumpet, that they would want to work the hardest on all those trumpet related things, for sure. And also, I think over assigning is a great thing to do because it really develops your sight reading skills and your ability to just look at something and pick it up and understand it quickly. I definitely credit my early trumpet teachers. The first three really overassigned me, and Gould sort of did the opposite. He actually didn't assign me anything. And my last year studying with him, I didn't take the trumpet out more than once. We just talked about things and listened to things. He wasn't into assigning, giving me trumpet assignments anymore. He was into developing other things. And at the time, I thought I really wasn't getting my money's worth at the Juilliard. But turns out it was a good thing. I guess these teachers sort of know what they're doing.
Yeah, probably. So, give me an example, if you could, a little bit of what one of those lessons was like.
Uh, well, yeah, some of the later lessons with Gould would be we would just sometimes listen to things, certain singers or certain violinists, and how they would use, say, vibrato as a tool of expression, and the style of vibrato that they would use. When we would listen to some jazz recordings, just it was sort of all over the map. We'd listen to South American music. We'd listen to Balkan. Like it would just be really diverse. In addition to that, to just kind of absorbing many different sounds of music, he loved to talk politics, and he loved to talk about how peached up the world was. So, and yeah, again, at the time, a noob New Yorker, like I wasn't ready. I wasn't there to like talk about politics on the same level that he was. But I got what he was saying, and how it related. In the case of a lot of artists, how what's happening in the world relates so much to music, and how you can express yourself as a reaction to things that are happening out there. So he really loved to talk about that. So like sometimes half the lesson or more than half the lesson would just be ranting about this or that, and him trying to get me riled up about something, and and care, and like see and know what's going on. I think that's an important part of education too, because it's so easy to just be in a tunnel when you're in school, to not know what's going on in the rest of the world, to not know a single piece of news, and especially when you're in New York. I think it's good to just know what's happening right away, and to talk about it, and to develop an opinion about things, while still like being receptive to other people's thoughts and opinions, and just taking all that in. I think that's really important in developing an artist and a person. So I hear a lot of really excellent players often who can just play it all over the horn but have nothing to say, and that's something that I value from the time I had with Gould, was that through other experiences and other things you can absorb, you naturally have more to say. It's not all about just playing your scales on the trumpet.
So, who kind of epitomizes that for you these days? What kind of jazz players? I mean, any kind of trumpet player, or maybe any kind of musician, not just trumpet.
Yeah, that's the thing. I've kind of diverted a few years ago away more and more from classical music, a little bit for that reason, because I felt that no one was really epitomizing that so much within classical music. Everything is still to the page. There's not, I mean, you can still express yourself within classical music, but you don't see a sort of do-it-all classical musician like in Mozart's day, somebody who was a player and composer. Whereas in the jazz world, that's mainly what you see, and the pop world often too. You see these artists who are both creating and executing their craft. So for me, I continue to listen a lot more pop and jazz artists for that reason, because I feel that they are the ones who are saying something in reaction to what's happening out there, and I find that more interesting than classical music. I still appreciate classical music as an art, and I'll always love it. But if I want to know like what's hip to the world, like I'm not gonna sit down and listen to another Mozart symphony. I appreciate it for other reasons. I appreciate it like I would go to the museum and see Michelangelo or something. But it's like different museum experiences. When you go to the MoMA here, you're going to get more of a taste of how things feel currently, versus when you go to the Met Museum, you get more of a taste for how things were then, and just great, beautiful pieces of art. So I guess to be more specific, who are some artists now who I feel like are doing that? Trumpet wise, Theo Crocker. I still don't know if it's Croker or Crocker. So,
Oh, that's not a name I'm familiar with.
oh, excellent.
Where's he from?
I saw him play here in New York, but I want to say that he is an LA guy, and I'm not sure. I haven't stalked him to that level to know where he lives.
But
But
is
I
it a
will.
jazzer? Is he
Yeah,
a
yeah,
jazzer?
he
Okay.
is. Marcus Hill, man, excellent player. Definitely has good things to say, and yeah, I think that trumpet wise, those two guys are doing some really great things. Christian Scott, of course. Um, they're really impassioned people, and you can hear their voice through their playing, and I definitely admire that.
A little bit different, and I'm not trying to put Hokan's name out there other than, have you seen what he's done with the Charlier
I
over the
saw a couple
last?
of them, yeah.
I will say, for my money, there's some real artistry there, and I think he can take classical music, and he's breathing new life into it. It's impressive what he's done, and I think, to me, I kind of say, wow, he's giving me permission to play that phrase that way. Like so often, I think we all have to stay within that a certain box with the trumpet repertoire. And I listen to somebody like him play, or Sergei, or Tina Helseth is another who I think plays just beautifully. Those are my 2 cents
Yeah.
on that.
It's hard to compare because it's just such a different world
Hmm.
of playing. And he's a great trumpet player for sure. I just saw him more than a few months ago now. I was in Amsterdam and happened to be there just for a few days, and he was playing with the Concertgebouw. So I was like, well, I guess I'd have to go see it. And got to know, there are a couple other trumpet players that I've gotten to know who live in Amsterdam. Miro, one of the principal trumpeters of Concertgebouw. Adam Rappa lives just outside of Amsterdam.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we actually we went to the concert and took it in. He sounded great, and he interprets things in a good way for trumpet players because he has a little more of a soloistic. I mean, he's been a soloist his whole life, so he's going to play it different than your orchestral trumpet player with a little
Right.
more liberties and a different style and nuance. So I think that's good, and it's good for an interpretation standpoint on something like that. But when we're talking about like an artist in the world today who's reacting to certain pieces of news and writing something and
Right.
being extremely diligent on their instrument, that's sort of, just for me, those are the things that I'm
Yeah.
drawn to.
Yeah. You mentioned the guys in the Concertgebouw. When I talked to Caleb a month or so ago, he was mentioning those guys and trying to do some sort of collaboration with them. And I don't remember their names, but of course that was probably on the same. You know what I'm referring to.
I do. I'm actually a part of that collaboration, and Caleb is editing it right now, and we are getting closer and closer to releasing something. Caleb has arranged an epic trumpet sextet, actually, that features. Well, I'll leave it. I'll leave it a mystery for now, but you already know that it features the two of
Okay.
them and me
Okay.
and Caleb and two other mystery trumpeters on this sort of
Okay.
large arrangement that Caleb's done.
Okay. Let's switch gears just a little bit. When you first got into Canadian brass, what year was that?
2006,
And who was the other trumpet player at the time?
Joe Bergstaller.
Who? Never heard of him.
Yeah.
In fact, I talked to Joe just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
It was, yeah, and another really deep thinker. I really enjoyed his interview. It's just,
Yeah, he
is
is.
very serious about music and getting deep into things. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I would credit him as being my fifth teacher in many ways. After Gould, I learned so much from him. just getting to play across from him in the group and hang out with him.
Who else have you? Of course, Caleb. You've played with Caleb and Chris. Any other combinations?
It was just them, Joe, then Chris, and then it was Chris and Caleb for a while, and now me and Caleb.
What brought you back?
Well, I guess time brought me back, and for one, Chris had his second child and had a full-time teaching job at Ithaca. Things were getting busy, and I think also the group was looking for some more artistic direction, and that's something that I know that, I mean, not to sound like arrogant, but I know that naturally that's just what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about writing music and providing artistic direction for whatever I'm involved in.
Yeah, there's nothing arrogant about that. I mean, it's what it is, right? That's your strength.
That's just what I do. Yeah, it seemed right. So I started. It's been about a year, although for the last half year we haven't been on the road. So I guess I was only playing with them for about half a year before all this happened, and there was definitely a lot of camaraderie that I missed when I wasn't with the group. It was really cool to go around and tour, and I think it's easy when you get into a group like that to kind of take that part of it for granted. The group has such a valuable name that it can still get booked all over the world just because it's Canadian brass, and people don't even, like, they'll book it without even like having heard it recently, just because the name Canadian brass has some value to these presenters and audiences. So it was nice to get to tour around with the guys, and both previously and then again last year, and see the world and just kind of get into that groove again.
Well, presenters may not know the new configuration, personnel wise, but I mean, the group certainly hasn't suffered for that high level of performance, and not just the instrumental performance, but the connection. I mean, you guys still have that ability to connect with an audience. Yes, very different from Ronnie and Fred and those guys, but it still works.
Yeah, and the group does plan on going on for many more years, which was also part of the reason for me coming back, because it seemed that was kind of an important thing. It's important to have the right combination of people in a group. It's something that you can't force. You look at the Beatles. There's something so magical about their chemistry. Unfortunately, they weren't together for super long, but there's no denying that, like, they had a magical chemistry. And when you look at the old Canadian brass, there's no denying, when you see some of those videos, that they had something. They were like in sync with each other, and they understood each other. And granted, they were around each other a lot more than what we are now. Canadian brass used to be way more busy than what the group is now. Well, especially right now.
Right.
But
I talked to Gene a couple of weeks ago. As a matter of fact, it was a blast chatting with him. But yeah, he told me that he started the meditation. Then everybody used to meditate before they go out on stage.
Yeah.
Is that still kind of a thing, or do you look at it differently?
Oh, I learned meditation from Gene in the year he left the group, actually. He taught me, and we've still kept in close touch. I would say that I'm more close with Gene now than what I was when we were in the group, and I credit that to the meditation that he translated to me. He is a certified TM teacher, and Transcendental Meditation, for those who don't know TM. And so I feel like my life completely changed once he introduced that to me, and I started to become just aware in general, more and more aware. So unfortunately the group doesn't do that, and not everyone in the group does it. Certainly don't all like collectively do it before performances. That would be nice. I'd be totally down to do that, but it's definitely a different ensemble now. I know that TM has still been a part of Chuck's life, of course, because he was in it with Gene, but it's trickled out. I believe Jeff, who you've also had on the show, I believe he has done it as well. I don't know if he learned it from Gene or if he did it officially, but I think that it's an incredible tool what TM has to offer to people, and when you're in a group like that, if you have one thing that's not music that you can all kind of agree on and do together, I think that can really build a strong bond between the people, a strong unspoken bond, which is really important to have when you're on stage and you have a hunk of metal up to your face and you can't speak to each other. You have this, you're just in tune to everyone, because just if anyone's ever meditated or done a breathing exercise, you go to this place where you have a heightened awareness, and that's essential to have when you're on the stage.
You are one of the more even-keeled trumpet players I've ever watched perform. It's like you have such an ease on stage. You know, there's no angst, there's no anxiety. And now you might be like, yeah, but you don't know what's going on inside, right? But you know, it's very easy to watch and to listen, and you know, you look like you play so effortlessly. You know, I can see where, I mean, you were probably that kind of player before, but I could see where all of that kind of comes in to work together on that.
To be honest, I've intensely dealt with nerve problems, and they come and go, and a lot of it I've noticed is due to repetition. Performance is something that you can definitely practice and get better at, but it's hard to get better at performance when you seldom do it. So I find when I'm not on the road for a few months and I come back and I play, I feel it again. Like my heart will pound, and when your heart pounds, it's hard to breathe. And when you are trying to hold your breath and let it out steadily in tune on a trumpet, it hurts. It does not feel good. It's not a good feeling at all. But if I'm on tour, I'd say after a few concerts, those feelings, those butterflies go away. If I am in tune with my breath, if I've done my breathing exercises and have felt solid with some meditation and not had too much coffee, then the performance will also go better as well. But I appreciate the compliment. I think I'm also trying to imitate a lot of other players when I'm up there, and unfortunately a lot of the teachers that I've had and players that I've watched videos of, I'm drawn to ones with similar characteristics who play with this sense of ease, because I would like to have a decently lengthed trumpet career, and if you're not playing with a sense of ease, your career may be shortened.
Right. How old are you right now?
34.
Oh, you're just a kid.
Just a kid still. They keep saying that to me. Even all the way from the time I was a kid.
Yeah.
Nice to be a kid for so long. Hopefully that will never change.
My department chair gets upset with me for referring to my students as kids. Like they're young adults. And I'm like, well, no, they're kids. But well, and to be a kid at heart, I'm 54, and I mean, still to do what we do, I mean, I don't feel 54. This is great.
That's the key to creating things into life, is to have a kid-like approach to everything. A sense of wonderment and that youthful energy. I heard a really wonderful thing. Are you familiar with Jacob Collier?
No.
Jacob Collier is a wunderkind of today. He's like the jazz pop Mozart of the day. Check him out. He had a really wonderful similar thing to say about his approach to creating everything that he creates. He does it with a sense of childlike curiosity and wonder, and it's important to never lose that.
You think audiences connect better with that kind of persona, that kind of presence?
I would say so. I certainly do. When somebody has everything kind of planned out, or they don't, uh, maybe certain people are, as consumers, as listeners and viewers, are more sensitive than others. But I can certainly tell when someone is enjoying what they're doing, and when they're not. And I think that most people can. It's another unspoken thing that, what you're feeling on stage as a performer is generally what what you're giving off there is generally what's going to be absorbed on the other end by the rest of the audience. They're going to feel what you feel, in addition to whatever sounds you're making on your instrument.
Yeah. So speaking of sounds, I can see your apartment back there. What's it like to practice in Brooklyn in an apartment? Or
I actually have a separate music studio a couple miles away that I bike back and forth to,
yeah,
and
okay.
I share a room within a larger recording studio complex. So I'm usually there in the mornings, and then my studio mate will come in and be there for most of the rest of the day. So if you've seen anything that I've posted lately that looks like it's a studio or coming from a studio, it's that studio. It's my studio mate has decorated it with some nice leaves and some Christmas lights and
Cool.
lighting. And but I've been doing lots of projects and working on a few different singles, a collection of trumpet etudes actually from this studio. I'm one etude away, one and a half etudes away from 12 etudes, both writing and recording them. So
Very cool.
I plan on releasing that by the end of the summer, and ITG maybe sharing one or two of them as well for free. Yeah, they'll be available on my website hopefully within a month. The final product will be done.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, well, let's wrap up here. But before we go, I don't remember how many years ago it was, but you and your dad came to Indianapolis.
Right.
And you did, it was a brass quintet version of Rhapsody in Blue.
Oh, that show. Right. Okay.
Yeah, well, I was your other trumpet player.
Yes.
For that. I didn't know if you remembered that. I mean, you've done plenty of performances, but...
I was thinking of we played with the Indianapolis Symphony, but yes, no, I remember the show as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, to be honest, that was the first and only time we've done Rhapsody in Blue with brass quintet and him. Usually we just do, of course, our own rendition for trumpet and piano.
Well, I'm putting that on my resume then.
It's the only time,
Right.
only time I've done it, or we've done it. Yeah.
So, anyways, well, good. I'm glad that you remember that. But
Of course.
well, this has been very enlightening and a lot of fun to sit and chat with you.
Likewise. Thank you
Thanks.
for having me.
I wish you the best through all of this. Stay healthy. And,
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you.